Bull research meetings about. So it's definitely a very brutal market out there, and a lot of the DeFi protocols are being stress tested right now. And so felt it's a good time to review on one of the most battle tested DeFi protocols. So today we're going to have our Boule member, Vonage, and also the younger one to present MakerDAO. So why don't you guys take it over?
Stablecoin. So currently, when we look at the market today, we have 6.8 billion DAI supply. 77% of this is coming from stable collateral, primarily USDC. The total value locked is around 9 billion. In general, we see that DAI is quite heavily over collateralized. This morning was 126%. Looking at Maker, at the DAO, valuation of 750 million fully diluted market cap. When we look at the importance of DAI, 11% of stablecoin volume is DAI, 43% of ETH lending market share. In general, of the total stablecoin volume, it's 4.5%. It's not the biggest one, but one of the largest ones, and we like the protocol a lot. So let's dive a little bit deeper.
Okay, so it's my turn. So how did we, why do we think this is even worthwhile talking about? There's some background noise. I don't know if you can hear the same.
With the levels and modules.
But I'm gonna keep on talking. So why do we think this is even worth talking about? So we switched, as I said before, months ago into stablecoin holdings, and so we were, a big part of our portfolio was the coins, by luck rather than any skill of being able to market time this stuff. But so, we had some discussions around concentration risks on different stable coins and looked into them. And, USDC, in our mind, is still, one of the safest stable coins. But obviously, you want to avoid concentration risk if you run a, portfolio or trading book. what we love about DAI is that they've really managed to find to create a stablecoin that people perceive as safe, that didn't have many issues in the past, that people are happy to, let's say, save in. Whenever you hold a substantial amount of stablecoins, DAI is definitely, at least for me, on top of the list. So I'd like to speak a little bit of this. So interesting. Again, they've established themselves, and here's somebody else talking in the background. Can you hear the same, or? Sphere, much smaller extent, of course, but similar. And I'd like to dig into the value of that and how it compares to, say, USDC, and why we think DAI is a superior product. So if we think about DAI, let's go back and think about how does DAI get created and how does it get funneled into the crypto economy. If we think about DAI as the central bank of crypto, the stable coin that's soft pegged to the dollar, then DAI as the central bank will funnel at basically zero cost of capital, or at least right now, they'll be able to create things that then will get funneled into the wider crypto economy. I mean, if you look at all of the integrations that they have, it's really impressive, right? They've been doing all kinds of different lending, mostly against crypto assets, but also more and more against, more interesting assets, real world assets, and so on. And that compares very differently to, say, something like USDC, which can really only issue their stablecoin against what I would call a very risk-free asset. So, US dollar deposits, or, short-term, T-bills, etc., right? So Maker has this ability to lend against slightly, assets that are slightly higher up the risk curve, maybe, but yield more, etc. And that's a fairly interesting approach. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So I just I just touched upon that. So if we think about Maker, we think its core infrastructure to the crypto economy today. It is this thing that basically spits out DAI against more long-term competitive advantage, it's actually something, given me this cash liquidity, something that people are happy to pay for, and are happy to pay multitudes for that than, say, using the service of a Maple or a Centrifuge or an Aave. So these two things I think are pretty interesting. Then, if I look at, say, a Circle versus a Maker, where is the difference really there between the two? How do we at least think about them? So you have, on the one hand, you have something that basically, Circle, that takes in these risk-free assets, US dollar deposits and T-bill and short-term T-bills, etc., issues against it, their stablecoin. They'll be able, it's an amazing business. They'll be able to issue these stable coins, make most of the carry, or at least, all of the carry, have very little equity buffer in there, etc. But how does the USDC then go to these lending opportunities? If we think about the journey from USDC being created to actually going to, the opportunities that are out there in terms of lending, well, it takes quite a while. There needs to be an intermediary or a trader or an investor that needs to take this USDC that probably lends them on to something else. And at some point, they'll get into a Maple pool, or they'll get into an Aave pool, or they'll get somewhere else. All of these intermediaries in the middle, they'll need to get paid, right? So you end up with a lending solution at the end of the day in USDC that will be pretty expensive, because they're, by virtue of their system, Circle just uses one type of asset, which is the most risk-free asset, in US dollar terms. If you look at Maker, it's actually very different. They are really, really, really close to the customer. DAI, in most cases, gets directly minted in order to be deployed in these lending assets. If we look at their vaults, customers come to them, they deposit crypto assets, say ETH or BTC or something else, and are able to get DAI directly, and they'll pay, they'll gladly pay some interest fee for that. If you think about the integration with Centrifuge, or hopefully the future integration with Maple, or the existing integration with Aave, DAI is directly being deployed as Maker receives collateral from Aave. And so they're really, really close to the customer. Well, what does that mean? At the end of the day, it means quicker deployment of liquidity. It probably means that they are less expensive, because there's no intermediary between them and their customer. Either they're less expensive or they're equally expensive, but just more profitable. One of the two. So we think this is a pretty amazing setup. And I'd like to quickly look at the financials also, in order to illustrate some of this. So if we look at Maker today, they are one of the only protocols out there that I know of that have been, profitable now for quite a while. Why are they profitable? Well, I think it comes down to, again, their main product, which is DAI, their long-term competitive advantage, which is the fact they've been able to establish themselves as somebody that mints stable coins, and that these stable coins are super reliable, and there's conservative collateral in it, etc. And they're able to capture all of the interest rates that they're able to charge. If you look at their financials, again, they're one of the only protocols out there that have actually been able to generate positive cash flows, positive net profits over quite a while. Now, obviously, that may change if we go into a deep crypto winter, and their overheads remain the same. Which I'm not sure what their plans are, but if their overheads remain the same, and the DAI issued gets slashed by another 50% or more, then maybe that will change. But today, at least, they are a super profitable, real business at the end of the day. If you look at their return on equity, I mean, it's also pretty amazing, right? For 100 DAI issued, currently most of their collateral is again, crypto native stuff that is easy to liquidate. For 100 DAI, they maybe have 100 DAI issued. They maybe have 2% of kind of like 2 DAI of equity buffer. They're able to make say 2% or 3% on every DAI issued a year. So feel free to make the calculation. The returns on equity capital are absolutely amazing. They're in the high teens. I think what they've recently printed is in the 50%, 70%, etc. If we think about real world assets, it'll be the same. Solutions for the peg that for me on the long term, being included in one liquidity pool or not, or having to pay for it or not, I'm not sure it changes. It changes a ton. I mean, I don't know how you see it, but if you want to use stablecoins today, there isn't so much alternative here, right? In terms of safe, serious. Going forward. And again, they're making all of the right moves in order to get there. Integrations with Centrifuge. I think they're working on integration with Maple, which is this another kind of like reputation-based lender. There is this ongoing discussion around the raise of some kind of like equity or equity-like capital in order to support a significant ramp up of real-world assets. At the end of the day, Maker today could very easily ramp up its real-world asset, at least in my mind, could very easily ramp up its real-world asset portfolio by, several hundred million. The reason why they're not doing it is because it's a new thing. They need this equity buffer in order to get there. But they are looking at all of the right steps. I think I don't know if there's an official roadmap, but I think these are the steps for them. Key area of growth for them, and the steps are integrations with more originators through Centrifuge and others, and Maple and so on, as well as this equity or equity-like rates. I mean, it's not equity in that sense. It will be some kind of token, but some first loss tranche or other thing.
Yeah, if you want to dive deeper, you can look at a quarterly strategic review Make published last week, where they talk about real-world asset and the real-world asset strategy. So what is public is that Make has been working with 6S Capital to get debt financing for Tesla, which is now one of the largest positions on the book, and they've also worked with
fail-safe mechanism, right? That shouldn't just be happening here and there. So wouldn't that be a sign of instability of the system?
We see it a bit different, right? Because when debt financing for Tesla, which is now one of the largest positions on the book, and they've also worked with.
But it's
We see that in a bear market and a turbulent market like today,
happening here and there.
Baker is
So wouldn't
able
that
to
be a sign of
liquidate very effectively and without any problems. We see it a bit different, right? Because when debt financing for Tesla, which is now one of the largest positions on the book, and they've also worked with. No one wants to have a bear market in a bear market, but we see that Maker is well equipped on the liquidation front, as well as from a P&L and a business model to, manage a multi-year bear market.
Thanks. Do you see the crypto assets, like more of the crypto assets flowing in as collateral, or do you see more flowing in as collateral, I guess, more than getting liquidated, or how is the current situation? Because I mean, it's a risk getting liquidated. 150%. And to provide so much collateral is quite a lot.
Yeah, Maker has a lot of collateral at the moment, right? It's all over collateralized with 129% as of this morning, which is a lot.
Do you see? I don't know whether you have the statistics on that, but do you see like people actually putting minting more DAI, or like more assets being provided as collateral for DAI than the liquidations, given the crypto winter?
So I think it depends, right? It depends on whose vault it is, right? Some vaults are getting liquidated, others are provided with more collateral, so there is not going to be a liquidation. I think this really depends on who really owns the vault and who owns the underlying asset. But yes, you see, of course, less minting because there is, less demand for DeFi, right? So to answer your question, yes, there is less minting at the moment, but that loss of revenue that's coming in from minting is at the moment compensated through the 13% liquidation fee. And if vaults are getting liquidated or vaults are getting more money in order to be more collateralized, it depends on the underlying vault owner, right? I guess no one wants to be liquidated. But sometimes you just don't have a choice.
Thanks. Excellent question.
Thank you.
Yeah. I actually have a question. So, one-ish and younger.
But I think from our side, we would provide the link to the quarterly strategic review from Maker. Yes, if of course someone has more questions, you have our Twitter, you have us on Aladdin. Please feel free to reach out.
I actually have one more question. Just how do you guys see the competition and potential threat from more capital efficient models like Liquidity and Frax? Right, both of them have done pretty well for this cycle.
Should I go ahead? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, when you say more capital efficient, what you mean, just to understand, is more less collateral, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Less collateral, but still able to keep the stablecoin pegged.
Yeah. Look, I think it's a different kind of style and approach. That's what I kind of also like about Maker is they're really built, first and foremost, they're really built around, they optimize for liquidity of their stablecoin, and they optimize for solvency of their stablecoin. And they, also when you speak to them and so on, they are very, very, very conservative in their approach, from at least my impression. And, they have this kind of approach where they say, no matter what happens, we want to, always be solvent. We want to always have enough collateral available. And therefore, we will just be, super safe, right? If you are, quote unquote, more capital efficient, i.e. less collateral, then, you become slightly more risky, and maybe that's fine. But I think Maker's viewpoint really is here that stablecoins are here to be, are basically there to act like risk-free kind of assets. And I think that's the approach that they're taking. And I think that's why, crazy stuff happens all the time. I feel like it's maybe like a rule of the universe. And I think Maker will, if they continue on this path, they'll be here for a long time, and crazy stuff will happen, and the guys that are more aggressive and don't solve for ultimate security, will probably go away at some point, right? Does that mean that Maker will maybe not grow as fast in some periods? Yes, but they'll be around all the time, and they'll have this asset that people feel safe holding all the time, right? And feel safe saving in, and so on. They won't, maybe they'll sacrifice on high growth, but at least the Maker's core asset is the fact that they have this DAI, this possibility to issue DAI, and that people are happy to save in it and buy it and hold it and feel super safe about it. I don't think they want to compromise any of that. So I think there are two different approaches. I'm not saying one is wrong versus the other. I just think Maker's approach is we want to be the safest stablecoin out there. And personally, that's more, let's say, my style. But by all means, I mean, something like Frax could technically work. I just think over a long enough time horizon, the stuff that's slightly too risky, problems will happen, and then, once you lose your name, it's hard to get it back, right? That's how I feel about it. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I just think, stable coins should be stable and really safe and be dollar-like. So, why not make it as safe as possible? I also think this other point around, being more capital efficient and, using less collateral, etc. The collateral is mostly profitable to hold, right? Because the collateral is all of this crypto lending and, in the future, real world asset lending, etc. So, the more collateral, the better, actually, because you're able to generate more yield, more absolute yield on that. So, and there is plenty of collateral out there. Sure, maybe there will not be enough crypto borrowing demand with such high LTVs and so on. But then, they're innovating in other stuff. They're innovating in real world assets. And why can't they innovate there? In my mind, it's because people are happy to borrow and DAI. People are happy to hold DAI. And they're able to issue DAI against real world assets. So again, I think it's a question of style, but ultimately, I think having more collateral is not necessarily a bad thing because it's interest bearing, and they'll just be around for a long time, and their selling point is just that they're super safe, in my mind. Hello?
Yeah. So Liquidity, right? Because they have just pure collateral, right? So in a way, it's probably safe, even safer than the Maker, right? Because Maker takes on a wide range of collateral. In particular, this exercise of bringing on real world collateral, that's just super difficult, right? And just it bring on a bunch of trust issue.
You guys, any more
real-world
questions?
assets.
Otherwise, happy to answer specific individual questions on Twitter with DMs.
Yeah, fine. We can take that offline.
Hold on, Voynich, are you able to hear Charlene? She was asking a question.
Exactly. I'm able to hear her, but I think the younger wasn't hearing her. He wasn't being rude or anything.
I didn't hear her. Apologies, didn't hear her.
I think there must be because Charlene sounds good to me. I think there must be a mute somewhere that's stopping her. Do you want me to relay your question, Charlene?
So,
or just ask to Voynich?
Yeah, I'm just, I do have some doubt around this, the safest stablecoin. Definitely Maker has been, around longest and the most battle tested, right? But in terms of, the model itself, Liquidity probably is safer in a way because it has pure collateral, right? And so,
because you think, because it only has one collateral type. That's what you're saying. It only has ETH or whatever, and that's it. That's your point.
Yeah, and the Maker takes on a wide range of collaterals, right? And crypto native and also the real world assets. And when you go to real world assets, right, it brings on a whole bunch of new issues, right? You have to trust the financial institution, the agents you work with, right, and the oracle issue, pricing oracle issues of these assets, right, and the transparency issues, right? You don't really know, what's going on with that portfolio. It's sort of remind me of the CDO things from the financial world. So it's probably not necessarily right in terms of the
Charlene, I cannot hear you anymore. There's somebody else speaking.
Duke of Kabit, please, can we get a mute?
I think I just muted them.
Okay, brilliant.
But not for everybody on the server. I think only Prad can do that.
Oh, that's it. Yep.
Yeah, can you give me the username, please?
Yeah, Duke of Kabit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a sec. Should be good now.
Yeah, so the safest, right, it's definitely, because they have been the longest, right, most battle tested. But in terms of the model itself, and in particular, what Maker is going into the real world, right, it's not necessarily going to be the safest, going forward.
No, these are fair points, and I mean there is, as you say, there is so much room for error. Maker has been really good at kind of like, at least in my mind, having this great, like risk managing their existing, I guess, collateral through a liquidation engine that works well and all of this stuff. And I do agree. I mean, real world assets have room for error for sure. Now, but it's not it. I wouldn't say that it necessarily makes the project more risky. It could also technically make the project more safe, assuming that the new collateral types are safe, because you have diversification, and in case of a complete flash crash, and your liquidation engines are not working quickly enough, then say something like Liquidity may may lose a bunch of money and a bunch of credibility, whereas Maker, with having a diversified pool of assets may fare better in that sense. But I agree, the presumption is that the collateral times that are being onboarded are safe, or as safe or safer than what they have right now, and that there is a equity buffer that is obviously higher than what you would have for crypto collateral, which is far more liquid, as you point out. So it needs to be executed well. I do agree, but I think if it's executed well, in my mind, you could have a healthier system because you are diversified across several different asset types. That's my view. But would you agree with that, or do you think do you think there's something very flawed with real assets in itself?
Yeah, I think it's a super risky to go into real world assets, right? And the Maker has been working on this for many years, right? And so far, there's just has been so little achievement. It's and actually it lose really the best features brought by DeFi, on transparency, right? And it's just so hard, right, to really liquidate them on time. And definitely look forward to see like more progress on Maker side, right? But I'm just think I really doubt it's a really good strategy going forward.
How do you think in your mind you would look to? Because isn't there an inherent problem in just being relying on crypto assets, just in case the crypto economy really goes down further and so on? Don't you want some type of sticky collateral? I mean, similar to how I guess a bank works, right? That they have all kinds of different types of collateral, and they'll just hold more equity capital against various types of collateral. So, needless to say, real world assets will need more equity buffer than, say, highly liquid crypto assets. But yeah, that's how I think about it. But I do understand your view too. I mean, it's very hard to execute.
I just think probably it's fundamentally a different view, right? I think crypto native asset is really the future, and it's going to be massive. Right? And taking real world asset on chain, right, sort of reminds me, in the early internet days, right, the first wave of application, people just try to, like bring information from real world on chain, right, and did all this portal website, right, the news website, etc. Right, and later on we find that the internet native content created, right, just one day, and could be what people used to create it in the offline world, right, for a few years, right. So I think probably a majority of the assets going to work for crypto and DeFi worlds are going to be crypto native in the future. Yeah.
I see that. Sorry, I see that. Say if you create a US dollar peg, US dollar is something from the old world. It's bound to the real US economy, the real world. If you want to track that, to take real world assets that are kind of bound to that economy to collateralize it. If you're talking about the future, then I guess I mean, if you're not using a US dollar pegged coin, but something like Ethereum, Bitcoin, then you don't need anything real world linked to it as collateral or whatever. But I think it's just the nature. As I see it, it would be the nature of it being pegged to US dollar, to the US economy in the end, is that it requires, or it makes sense to also collateralize some of those real world US assets.
good point. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think probably we're going to have all kind of crypto native assets way beyond our imaginations, and probably the most disruptive things for crypto will come from this new category of things. And thank you so much, Voynich and Younger, for your presentation and all the insights you have shared. And finally, I just want to add a quick update on AladdinDAO's incubated project concentrator. Currently it offers the highest yields on convex vaults by offering compounding services from convex CRV staking pool. Concentrator is going to launch initial farm offering soon. It's a fair launch to distribute tokens to make Concentrator a truly community-owned and community-run protocol. And it is also the first time ever have a fundraise by taking farming yields in crypto and DeFi. And we are also going to launch a community contributor program. It's an open program to attract contributors to help us to educate the community on Concentrator and also the initial farm offer. So we're going to post more details on this later, and you can find us on Concentrator Twitter account and Discord. And please also feel free to ping us if you have any questions and if you would like to contribute. That's pretty much draw the end of today's meeting. If there are no further questions, so we'll end here. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Great.
Thanks, everyone. Great discussion.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good one, everyone.